In this video, we'll talk about the 5 things that you probably didn't know about the Kaizer Chiefs sponsorship money. Because I've seen a lot of people talking about, hey, Chiefs, he has money, they have sponsorship, they have money from Toyota, they have money from Kappa, they just renewed their contract with Matt Shetty, so Chiefs can compete. But that's not necessarily true, and I will tell you why. Hello and welcome to Kosi Nation Fan TV. I am Pelo, I am your host. This is where fans meet and talk about Kaizer Chiefs Amakosi Football Club. And the first thing that I want us to talk about is the fact that as much as you can have 20 million, first of all, it also depends on how you are planning to manage the money. Because 20 million, for example, is not sometimes when we say the deal with Kappa is worth this much. It's not been publicly revealed, but kunama rumors. So some people, let's just make an example, will hear Uguti Chiefs have 500 million. I'm just making an exaggerated example. 500 million from Kappa. And then now people are going to say, hey, Chiefs have 500 million, but it's a deal worth 500 million. How long is the deal for? It's over 3 years. So that means that 500 million, maybe that's too much. That 50 million will be divided over 3 years. So you can't just say, oh, since we have 50 million, a 50 million deal with Ukapa, that means we're just going to spend all the 50 million in the first year. So what about the second year? What about the third year? Because that's how teams go bankrupt. Because you just say, oh, we just received this much money, now let's go spend all of it. It doesn't make any sense because sometimes contracts get cancelled along the way. And that is why sometimes the payment system is we pay you 22 million first year, 22 million second year, 22 million third year over ama installments. It's not just VOOP, now go 50 million or 66 million, as I just made an example. Go spend it. It doesn't make sense. On the other hand, you have the Sundowns who actually have 20 million who just came straight from ICAF and they get it cash and they're going to utilize that. So you can never then say these people can compete nabantu abanayo imali right now compared to the people who are going to get the money over time. The second reason is that you don't know how much each Chiefs are owing to whoever that they can be owing because they're a business entity. Another thing that I would like to make an example with is, remember Uguti Chiefs recently, few years back, the family required all the other shares, most of the shares, so that it's majority owned by the family. How do you think they paid for that money? Where did the money suddenly come from? It's possible, I'm not saying this is what happened. It's possible, Uguti, they are still paying that thing off to get them the shares back. And because of that, they could still be paying for that money to reacquire some of the shares. I am just spitballing here, Uguti. We don't know what Chiefs owes. We don't know how much Chiefs spends on other things that they are not publicly sharing with us. Because as we have seen, our team, they don't necessarily reveal everything to us. There are a lot of things that the Chiefs doesn't tell us. They will tell us, oh, we have a deal with this, the Royal Bafokeng, but they will not tell us it's worth how much. So Tina will just saying, oh, based on the fact that they have a deal with Royal Bafokeng, that means it's a lot of money, but we don't know how much that it's worth. We also don't know how much money they are also paying to other people. If you are enjoying the video, by the way, please do make sure to smash that like button. Another one, a very big one, the wage structure. We know, or we've heard to go to Kama earns 800k per month. We've heard to go to Dolly earns 1.4 million. We heard things like Kukune getting 500,000. Just from those 3 players, you are having how much money? 2.7 million per month on 3 players. One is injured, one sits on the bench, one is also always injured. Utole at least was playing for a majority of the season. But 2.7 million in a year, I'm not even calculate, but I can calculate it just for the fun of it. If you say 2.7 million, you take that money in a year. So I didn't calculate. 2.7 times 12. That's 32.4 million. 32.4 million spent on 3 players. You understand? You understand, Uguti? We are not talking about the entire wage bill Kaizer Chiefs. We are just talking about Kune, Dolly, and Kama. 32.7 million from the 3 players. So then you can't say, oh, we can compete with the Sundowns, because as much as we also talk about how each Chiefs they pay the highest paying, the Sundowns are not the highest paying also. So the wage structure is Sundowns, the wage structure Chiefs are different. So because of that, the money that we spend is not necessarily similar to the money that Sundowns are spending. Speaking of Sundowns, number 4, the competitive balance. So you take the Chiefs who have, let's just say, the 50 million from Kappa, even they have 50 million over 3 years. We're making an example. This is not a fact. We're just making an example. 50 million from Kappa, but they are going to get it over 3 years. So if you divide 50 by 3, you get something like, guys, if you do that, you're getting something like 16, 17 million. So 17 million per year, but it's also divided in months, right? Because they have to pay bills. So Sundowns have 20 million from MECAF from the previous season. That's not being paid over years. That's the money that they have. The money from the league, it's not the money that's paid over years. It's the money that they actually have. So how are we going to compete with the team financially? Just tell me, right? It might seem like I'm trying to look smart. I'm not. I'm just trying to have a conversation with you guys, because I feel like some of us would just make points, which it's okay to make a point. But when you start to sit down and say, okay, let's see what you're saying and see how much sense does it actually make. Not good you're talking nonsense, but let's just reevaluate, because sometimes we just go with our feelings. Oh, I feel like Chiefs should be doing it because of this. But that's not really true. Sundowns has more money from these competitions, and in general, they just have more money than the Chiefs. And the other one, number 5, is that there are just some unforeseen expenses, right? But right now, it is a foreseen expense. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the fact that Chiefs are looking to buy a women's team, right? And they tried to buy a women's team, and we know Guti that wasn't successful because the pricing wasn't right. And we know Guti currently they are actively working on getting a women's team, to buy a women's team. So my question then to you is, do you really think Chiefs would spend 20 million, say, if Fiston Maele Iyanga say 1 to 20 million? Do you actually think Chiefs will go out and spend 20 million on a player who might be a risk to begin with? Because I know Guti with Ukambule, it wasn't much money, it was just 3 million, as they said. It wasn't much of a risk, but he was hot playing up there, go Zambi. He comes to SA, and then all of a sudden, he's no longer performing at the same level that he performed at. So there's always a risk. And then if you're going to go out and just break the bank for a player who might still struggle at your team, we know he's performing good young, we know he's performing good Champions League, but you are risking with 20 million that you could be putting towards buying a women's team on a player who's not proven in the PSL. You see how they might be thinking. I'm not sitting here trying to defend the management. I do think our management can still do better and get more players and be bolder in spending money. But I can kind of see Uguti where Sundowns can always beat us when it comes to recruitment. And yes, I know Uguti Sundowns, there are players that they just went and got, and that was good. But there are also players that Chiefs there are also players that the Chiefs wanted, and Sundowns got them away from us just because. Sbusiso Villaga is one example. The other recent example is Terence Mashego. Even Urulani made an example, Yoguti, why they signed Terence Mashego. You can check that out on this video. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think about this whole thing? Let me know down in the comment section. And until next time, remember, equals Halpelumo.